Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining our March 2018 webinar. My name is Adam Smith, and I am the Business Development Manager here at Discoverygarden. This month, we are pleased to announce the availability of the Islandora Spreadsheet Ingest Module. This module allows users to ingest data into Islandora using a spreadsheet. With me on the line today, I have Stephen Perkins. Stephen is our Solutions Architect here at Discoverygarden, and he is going to be taking us through the ins and outs of the module. Welcome, Stephen.
Thanks, Adam. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to join us to take a look at this module. I'm pretty excited about it. So I always start by talking about the impact of any new feature that we want to bring into Islandora. And for the spreadsheet module, one of the biggest drivers was to bring in some flexible batch import features. We wanted to have a means to bring in really big numbers of objects across collections, allow clients to use their own metadata guidelines. Right now, the spreadsheet module supports the use of mods, but of course, everybody uses mods in a different way depending upon their content type or their metadata practices. And also to be able to import objects of different types all at the same time. So maybe you want to be able to ingest images, PDF files, compounds, these types of things, and do it all at the same time. And even be able to target them, as we said, across collections. Another nice thing about a spreadsheet ingest is it lets you leverage some of the features that spreadsheet apps have, whether you use Google Sheets, as we'll take a look at today, or Microsoft Excel, or whatever Office suite that you use. The majority of them support really fast and easy data entry. And there also means that you can set up data entry validation. So this is kind of nice. You know, nobody needs to become an XML expert. You can give people a template to fill in. There are some features that we'll take a look at today, like using drag and fill for populating fields that have the same values. Data entry validation lets you set up controls inside the spreadsheet. So if you want to restrict people to, say, to limited values for a particular metadata field, you can enforce that. So it's a really nice way to get a lot of data prepared in a very quick fashion. And being able to do this, it empowers people. It reduces costs. If you got a way you don't need to write any scripted ingests, you're not constrained by having to work with some of the the bulk or zip ingests as we have. It's a way to get a lot of data in quick without needing to use a service provider to give you any assistance. Also, if you're involved in a migration, a lot of times the legacy softwares that you're moving data out of will have facilities for you to export that metadata in spreadsheet format. So that's rather convenient. You have an opportunity there to do your data cleanup, set up a mapping to move it into Islandora, and then you go. So all of these things were what we had in mind when we designed this particular module. So to give you a quick overview of how the solution works, we'll take a look at the components, how Islandora fits into the picture to give it a bit of context, what constraints the modules currently have, and what are the steps to make use of it. So there's really not much to this. If you contact Adam, he can help you get hooked up. We install the Spreadsheet Ingest Module, and then you may or may not need much in the way of supporting professional services. We can have a training session to show you how to use the module, although honestly, if you just ask for a recording of this webinar, you'll probably be there. And if you need assistance with subject matter expertise to create your metadata profiles, we can help you with that. We can help you construct templates, because you will be able to support as many templates as you wish. Your metadata profiles may vary across collections. This setup takes that into account. And we can also help you evaluate whether you've been successful with your ingests. Anytime you're doing bulk import processes, you want to have a QA process in place to verify that you've been successful getting everything in the way that you want to. So as you learn through these webinars, I'm big on context charts because they give us an easy way to understand how things work. So right now, taking a look at Islandora as our solution, we've got a spreadsheet module within Islandora, and then there are some other entities that interact with it. The two human entities are going to be the data administrator. This is a person who will be in charge of making your metadata profiles and setting up your templates that the spreadsheets will map into. And then content contributors. These will be people that are filling in the spreadsheets, and they'll save comma-separated values that they will upload to make ingest requests. Now, the spreadsheets just contain the metadata. So you'll need a way to get the digital files that you want to match up to those metadata records onto the server. So the way we do that is to set up an SFTP site where you'll be able to upload the digital assets, and the spreadsheet will reference them, and those two things will be combined to create an Islandora object. Amazon Web Services is shown here just as a representative of where you may do your storage and backups of your data from Islandora. You may also be hosted internally on your own system, so that's why that's asterisk. It's just one representation of a storage setup. So the constraints that we have at this time are the content models that are listed here: large and basic image, video and audio, compounds, documents, the binary solution pack, and PDF content models are supported. And coming really soon are going to be books and newspapers. So how do we use this? Well, we're going to walk through this, but this is a basic outline of the steps. First, you're going to create a spreadsheet according to your metadata guidelines. Basically, this means you'll create some columns that are mandatory that the spreadsheet ingest needs, because it needs to know what collection you want to assign to something, what content model you want to use, this type of thing. But then you'll add in columns for the mods fields that you use in your metadata profiles. The next thing you'll do is we create a template that maps those spreadsheet columns to XML nodes within a mods file. So this eventually becomes your mods. This gives Islandora the instructions that it needs to create a mods XML file on your object. Where do I take the data in a particular column of the spreadsheet? Where does that go in the mods XML? And for each ingest request, you're going to enter the data into a spreadsheet. Of course, that's going to be based on your template. You'll upload the digital files that correspond to the rows in the spreadsheet. Use that FTP that we just looked at. You'll make the ingest request, and then you'll review the results. And this is really convenient because the spreadsheet modules are hooked into the Islandora batch reporting system. So every time you make a request, you'll be able to reference the batch ingest reports and review those objects conveniently. Don't forget your housekeeping, though, because if you verified that your ingest has been successful, you'll want to make sure that you maintain your space properly on the server, remove any digital files from that upload folder after you've been successful. So let's see how this all plays out. I'm going to move to a live demonstration. I'm using Google Sheets today, and let's see, I'll make this a little bit bigger. Perhaps works a bit better on the screen share. So in my spreadsheet, I've created a simple spreadsheet. This is a template that I created a very, very, very basic template profile for. Now, there are a couple of required fields here. One is going to be the label. The label's not always the same as the title that people keep within on their Islandora records. So we do have a separate column for that. There's a column for a binary file. If you are going to be importing records, and that's not required, you can make what we call stub records that have metadata only. You can leave that empty, as I've done for creating a compound here. But if you are going to map a binary file in that associates with this metadata record, then you will here have the path of that file on the SFTP site that you've uploaded it to. So I've really skipped a step because what I would have first done is to roll out my FTP client and uploaded files. Now, I'm not on the VPN that connects to the demo server, lamentably. We call this the demo effect, where you always make some mistake. But if I was, I would just connect to the FTP site and upload these files, which I've done in advance to save some time for the demonstration. So these files correspond to the ones that we're going to create an ingest request with. Now, we need to have a field that says what our parent object. Now, a parent object in this case is going to be one of two things. It's either going to be the collection that I want to associate an object in. And I have in advance, I'm going to log in now to our demonstration site, created a target collection that I want to send these to, called, oddly enough, the Spreadsheet Ingest Webinar Collection. Now, right now, this is empty, but you notice what I'm using to populate the spreadsheet is the Islandora PID for that collection. So this is how I target which collections. Now, I could have multiple target collection PIDs in the spreadsheet. It doesn't matter. You're not restricted to one. So if you're just assigning membership of an object to a collection, then you'll just use the PID for that collection. In the event that you're building a compound object, or as you might shortly in the future make a book or newspaper object for a given issue, you would use the PID for the compound parent or the book. And then that will create the correct relationship, as we're going to see in another column, between this object and its parent. Now, we do need to have a column to say what content model that we're going to use. And a helpful thing for that, this is where I wanted to show you how you can use some of the spreadsheet validation features. So instead of having people manually enter these things, what I've done is I've created a worksheet that has all of the content models that are supported. And then I've set that up with data validation as a drop-down. So I can just simply use a drop-down. And if I'm making a lot of records for the same object, it's really convenient to be used something like drag and fill, so I can just fill them in. And this is what's really nice about using spreadsheets for doing data entry. Now here's where we get to the part that's unique to my use. I've just created this very simple metadata profile where I have a title, names, an abstract, an identifier, and a type of resource. So again, here's an example of using a spreadsheet validation features. In the mod schema, the type of resource element has a restricted set of values. So same approach. I set up a worksheet where I have a list of the allowed values for that field, and then that is just used in data validation as a drop-down. So it's a nice way. Anytime you can move the quality of your work upstream for quality control, you should do that. So I've also added a field for subjects and a local note. Now, here's another feature I want to point out. When you look at the value for subjects, you think, well, if I'm mapping a single column, an entry in a single field to a mods node, what do I do when I have multiple values that I want to populate, as such is the case frequently with subjects? So for subjects, I've used a semicolon delimiter. This is configurable. You can tell the Spreadsheet Ingest module what you want to use for a delimiter to bust these into separate elements. Because when these come out into the mods file, I want them to be populated into multiple subject topic elements. But in the spreadsheet, I just want to be able to enter multiple values into one. Now, moving along to the last couple of columns here, you see I've got a column for a PID. This is an optional, and also what we call the parent predicate. I may want to specifically give an object identifier if I'm doing something like building a book or a compound. In this case, I'm building a compound record. It's going to consist of a couple images of the same particular location. In that case, if the compound doesn't exist in Islandora, it's impossible to map children to it, what we call child objects in a compound, or constituents. So in that case, I want to create a hard code and identifier for it, so I can create an association, and this is what I've done. Now, of course, manually creating identifiers has some perils. So generally what I do is create them using the target namespace that I want to send something to, the current date, and a numeric suffix. You may take another approach, but Generally, if I'm working, this helps me to prevent collisions. But do keep this in mind. If you have multiple people that are filling in templates, review any PIDs that you're creating for uniqueness. The parent predicate lets me establish a relationship between the row that has the metadata record and where I want to assign it to, back here, the parent object. So this column, and you can move these columns about if it was convenient for me to move this next to the parent predicate, because I found that a more cognizable way to work. The order is not important, as you'll see in the mapping. What I'm doing here is establishing a relationship between the record that I want to put in and the parent object. In this case, I'm saying I want this to be a member of the collection, and the collection is the PID that I had. Now, in the compound that I'm building, which constitutes these 3 rows here, I'm creating an is-member of collection for the compound parent, and then for the children, I'm using the is-constituent of relationship. This is the verb that Islandora uses to connect children to their compound parents. So I've created a spreadsheet. It has all my metadata, and we've used some of the spreadsheet tools. Now we need to think about creating a mapping that tells me which values in these fields correspond to which XML nodes in a mods file. To do that, I generally work in a validating XML environment. In this case, I'm a big fan of Oxygen, as some of you may have heard me state in the past. What I generally do first is I start with a known valid mods file. And I build myself a template. And I know it's good because it validates. And I build a template out to my metadata profile. This isn't the one I'm using for the webinar. It's just an example mods file. But I use these for testing all the time because they're really helpful for testing not just your ingests, but your indexing settings as well. So once I have a template built out, then I can build the template that will be used to map the spreadsheet fields into the mods file. Now, you may choose to have Discoverygarden create these for you, but they're really not that difficult, and there are so many of you digital humanists out there that have mad skills. So I'd like to roll through it just briefly, even though it's slightly technical. Essentially, you create a set of parameters that correspond to the columns in the spreadsheet. Where you see title here, this is actually just, these are the names of the spreadsheet columns. This means the template can create a map between a parameter and a value that's in a given column. And all of these commands, which are in extensible style sheet language, some of you may already say, oh, hey, they're building a mods file. And yes, we are. I'm just issuing a simple statement that says, if there's something in the title column, put it in the mods title node. And that's how all of these work, with the exception of some of them that may do what we call a tokenization, meaning, hey, if I've used a semicolon within a particular column, I want you to build out an element for each value tokenized at that semicolon. So this is the way in which we deal with those entry of multiple values into a single field and correctly build them into XML. So now at this point in time, I have my template, I've got my spreadsheet, and you can just make a copy of that spreadsheet and blank out the values to send it to anybody that's going to be filling in your data. I've uploaded my digital files. Now I'm ready to take some actions. Templates, I'm logged into the webinar site now. Templates are managed in the utility modules. You'll see that the Spreadsheet Ingest is listed here. And when I go there, I have the ability to add and manage templates. You can have as many of these templates as you want. Maybe you've got one for PDF objects that you're loading in, one for audio objects, anything that has sort of a different metadata profile. Now, you can assign some defaults. One of them that's important is to let it know where your FTP folder is that you've uploaded images that it needs to retrieve. So for each one of these, you can download them and update them, and you'll see that I've uploaded my template already. as the webinar template. You can delete these. All your changes will be made here. But since my template is in place and everything's ready to go, I'm ready to make a request. Making a request is done in the Spreadsheet Ingest page. So this is pretty straightforward. When I'm done with my spreadsheet, I just save it as a CSV file, comma. So these are comma delimited spreadsheets that the Spreadsheet Ingest module takes for input. And once I've done that, then I can choose my file here. So I've got my sample data, and I'm going to upload that. Once I've uploaded the spreadsheet, then I select the template that I'm going to use. I select the data stream that the metadata will go to. In this case, I only have one option, which is mods. This fun name here, base binaries folder, just indicates where are the digital assets that you're going to be referencing in your spreadsheet. That will populate with the default folder that was in the settings that we set up. And last but not least, I need to know the namespace on my Islandora site that I want to bring them in. And once I've filled out this form, then I go ahead and make my request. So it's going to take a couple minutes. I actually have a few things in there. I've got some images, a PDF, an audio file. It's going to create the objects, make all the metadata streams, and create the derivatives from them for display versions of the images. Okay, and now my ingest request has been processed. Now remember, I said earlier in the presentation that the spreadsheet ingest is connected to the batch queue system. So this is a nice way to say, okay, everything got in. Did I have any issues? No. Fantastic. So if I go back to my home collection, I should see that everything's been imported. And there it is. This is the compound record that's been created. I've got an audio file that I built in. We've got a thesis that's been brought in. So as you see, this is what's nice. We can do all kinds of different content all in the same ingest request, which is one of the restrictions that we have on some of the zip importers. They only work for a single type or a single solution pack. So that's an end-to-end use. Once I had verified my objects, I'd go back to my FTP site and clean out the files, and then I'm done and ready to move on for the rest of my work. So now I'd like to open it up for questions and answers that you may have.
Thank you, Stephen. That's very informative as always. The typical procedure here is to type your question in the chat window, and I will read it out. So we'll give it a few seconds for you folks to gather some questions. Okay, question one. Is it possible to update metadata with the spreadsheet module?
No.
while we're waiting for a few more questions to come in, I'll talk about the next steps here. I will be sending out an information package to everybody on the call after you're complete here today. It'll have a link to the recording and as well talk about the module itself. The cost of the module will be $3,000, a flat fee, one-time fee. If anybody's interested in the module, please contact me. Reply to the email that you'll get later on today.
Let me respond to the next question, which is, can the tool be used to download metadata for collections Islandora corrected and replace it? No, it's not designed for that, but there is a community tool that you could try for that. I think there's an Islandora data stream exporter and importer module, which may be a part of the Islandora Awesome Suite. By the way, both of those first two questions, great ideas.
Are there any additional questions? Could you clarify what the tool does with compound objects?
I'm not sure that I understand the question, but I'll run through the... So what you need to do now, when you create a compound object, if it's an existing object that you want to assign new children or to assign children that's already in the repository, you would just enter a row in the spreadsheet for each of the children, enter the PID of the parent object, and then establish the is constituent of relationship in the column for assigning that. If you need to create a compound object to assign the children to, it can be done all in the same spreadsheet, but you do need to manually assign a PID to the parent so that relationship can be established. Does that answer the question? Great. And then go ahead, Adam, if you want to read the question.
Sure. What are the limits of the module? Can it be used for 1,000+ objects?
Yes, it can. And thanks for raising that point. So you can use it for thousands of objects, but you will need to work within the constraints of the performance and scale that your infrastructure is set up for. I.e., if you're working on a server that has limited CPU, horsepower, memory, disk space, and is not set up with job servers, your thresholds for the largest ingest will be smaller than people that have higher performance infrastructure.
The next question is, can you supply a mods file yourself?
Yes, absolutely. So as with all of these, the modules like this and the content DM migration, we're looking to be able to have people use them without any assistance and only provide that on an as-needed basis. You can set up your own mods file, your own spreadsheet template, if you have those skills.
Is there any documentation for the module available?
Yes, there is.
Yes. I will supply a copy of the README in the follow-up information package. All right, a couple more seconds to see if there's any more questions. All right, there doesn't seem to be any more coming through. Again, thank you for taking the time to join us today. It was very informative, and you can expect to hear from me later on this afternoon. Again, if you're interested in the module, please contact me directly at any time, and we'll be able to help you out. Thanks again to Stephen for facilitating, and stay tuned for our next webinar in April. Great day.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.